Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem video. This is a postmortem of my Blitz chess game number 143. I was white here and I was trying out the Reti opening. Now the Reti you start out with knight f3. This is not an opening that I play normally, so I just was inspired to play this by watching Chess Explained's channel, and he plays it a lot. So I'm just trying to learn the opening, so I'm going to try it from time to time. I never thought it was a particularly good opening. I always played the classical openings with the e4 and d4, but it has its points, and I'm trying to figure out what they are. And you get to watch me as I make these efforts. So the normal move here for black, he could reply with the d5, just directly putting a pawn on this long diagonal, which white is hoping to get a bishop on g2 here and have a lot of influence on this long diagonal. G6, just setting up a, cancel that, I did not mean to play that, setting up a symmetrical position. B6, setting up an opposing fianchetto with the other bishop. B5 and C5 are ideas. B5 is kind of a funny idea. C5, going into like an English setup. E6. Anyway, lots of moves. My opponent played C6, one of the most rare. And after this, the thing is, there's no particularly bad moves at this point. I haven't made any aggressive moves that black needs to counter, so black has time to get whatever setup he prefers. Looks like the most common response here is C4, which I'm going to play C4 later, so that's kind of logical, getting C4 in now before he plays D5. Might save a tempo and give me a little more freedom as to where I place the knight. The way I do the setup, I play D6 first and then C4, and I have to worry about, he'd already played D5 by then, I have to worry about if he's going to take on C4. So if I want to play C4, maybe this is the right time to do it. But I didn't play that, so he did go with D5. And now we've actually kind of transposed back into a mainline position. I could just castle here and be similar, I guess, to the lines where he started out with D5 here. Or I could play C4 again. Now I have to worry about him taking. I was thinking about C4 at this point, but I wasn't sure what to do after pawn takes. Actually, let's check that out as a variation. Now there's no check to win the pawn back. Just castles, letting him have the pawn. Knight bd7. And queen c2 going after the pawn this way. And knight b6 defending the pawn. He could also consider b5, although it's not here. After knight bd6, after knight to b6, what's the move? a4. That's interesting. Chess Engine likes knight a3, going after the pawn. It looks like it's playable anyway. Just letting black take the pawn. I didn't play c4. I played the move d3. And he played g6 now, getting into this symmetrical setup. And I castle. He goes bishop g7, knight bd2 so I can take back on c4 with a pawn. He castles. And I play c4. And you see we're still in the opening book. And see, the game is about even. A lot of times with these offbeat openings like the Reti, other non-mainline openings, you end up in situations where you only have a slight advantage or where your opponent is basically equal. But if they're openings you play a lot, you may have the advantage in experience over your opponent. Anyway, he goes rook e8, and I didn't do anything to counter his move. He's going to play e4 the next move. I suppose I could have considered playing, he's going to play e5 the next move. I could have considered playing d4 here, but maybe it's not good. d4. It's queen b6 or bishop e6. Queen b6 is a bit awkward, yeah, putting pressure on this pawn. And also the b pawn. Bishop e6. Interesting, but it would slow down the e5 move if I was trying to play that. I was more concerned about his dark squared bishop on this diagonal. I played rook to b1, and he played e5. And now we're out of the opening book, so we can just look at the notation tab here. And like I said, this is about an even game, so far so good. b3, my turn. No, cancel that. b3, b6. So we're just making normal developing moves. Bishop b2. I was hoping to get some pressure against his advanced pawns in the center. And he just develops and supports those pawns. And now I move my rook again to c1, but it didn't seem so useful on b1, so a bit of a slow opening here. Bishop b7. And now, oh yeah, so now here was the first kind of interesting moment after the opening. I noticed here that I could take his knight and win a pawn. And so it's always interesting to try out these exchange sacrifices. An exchange of a rook for a knight or a rook for a bishop is usually worth about 1.5 pawns. So if you can win a pawn, then you really only need some other small advantage to make up for it. Like, for example, if you had a pawn plus the bishop pair, or if you had a pawn plus you had inflicted some damage on your opponent's pawns, then you would have sufficient compensation for the exchange. Here I don't really. So after the move bishop b7, just naturally dropping back, you'll see my advantage is around half a pawn. So in other words, what I have is I've given up the exchange and I've gotten a pawn, and it's not enough. I was thinking maybe this isolated pawn here would be a target, but it's well defended. He's got the knight, the queen, and the bishop all supporting it, and he can bring more force up as needed. So it's not particularly weak at this point. But a half a pawn in evaluation here is still, it's not necessarily losing. It's just an advantage for black there. So d4, the computer had a very interesting suggestion here. Knight df3 was not what I was talking about. I was talking about the idea of queen a1. Now this is interesting. Just put your queen in the corner here, and you get a battery along this diagonal. If I had thought of that, I would have played it. And actually, speaking of Chess Explained, who inspired me to play this opening, you often see this kind of queen move in his games. And so maybe that's why he likes these fianchetto setups, and the queen in the corner can be a valuable piece here. So I'm not playing in the best way after giving up the exchange. And my disadvantage is increasing, I guess. My opponent's advantage is slowly increasing as I play these slightly less than accurate moves. But it's not out of hand yet. And with just, I was having trouble also. I guess in this structure I can't seem to find a good spot for this knight. So that's another defect. I mean, it's kind of the natural home for it is on this square, but he can just exchange it and win the pawn back anytime. Well, maybe it doesn't win a pawn because of my bishop, but it would inflict some damage. So I don't think knight e5. Yeah, knight e5 is not a particularly good move here. Okay, so the game continues. Here. So that was a mistake. Queen d2. I saw that he was lining up a battery on the C file, and I could not think of a plan really to. I did not come up with a good plan to counter it. Chess Engine is recommending queen to b1 or rook to e1 or queen to d3. Yeah, I saw this earlier, queen d3, and it's hard to say what the idea is. How about if he just continues like this, play h4, and say, what are you going to do? Rook here, and now rook b1, just defending. Okay, so that's a way to play. It's a little bit awkward. Your pieces are kind of stuck over here in a defensive formation, so black can continue to probe and try and find weaknesses, maybe launch some pawns forward, a5 or h5. Okay, another way to play, and better than what I played, queen d2, which kind of walks into this rook c2 idea. But I had a plan which was to counter with rook c1, and this is just a bad calculation on my part. So the evaluation goes from being maybe about a pawn down to being about 3 pawns down. So I'm losing at this point, and the way he plays it is just right. He takes it off, and the thing is, now he has total domination of the c file, and once he gets in here, he's going to win some material. So I try to get out of the way. But I can't clear out fast enough. And so he wins a pawn, plus his pieces are active, and he's up the exchange. So good for black here, and he should go on to win the game. So that's what makes the rest of us interesting, is to see why black doesn't win the game. So not much is going on here. I mean, I'm just trying to find squares for my pieces even. I still haven't found a good spot for this knight. But the secret to chess a lot of times is if you can get your pieces to good squares where they're active and not harassed, then good things can happen. But I just gave up on the knight. It seemed so useless, but my disadvantage has increased, so I probably should have tried to keep the knight harder. And now I'm forced to give up a piece to stop his pawns from queening. But I do get both pawns. And so now I have a bishop and a pawn here. These are my extra pieces. And he has a bishop and a rook. So he's got a rook for a pawn. And he should go on to win here as well. Now I don't want to give up my bishop. So he's doing okay so far. I'll get to the first mistake in a little bit. Even now, I start to activate this pawn, and but you see, he still has a pretty strong advantage. He has time to stop this pawn. This move here maybe was a weak move. What's the recommendation? Bishop a2, bishop a6, f5. f5 hitting my bishop is an interesting idea. I thought maybe checking with the rook here would be good. What about this? I mean, why not just, I'm sorry, I shouldn't go there because I'm giving up a pawn. I want to go here. And now f5, hitting the bishop. But what if he just takes the bishop? See, he still has a 3-point advantage by the chess engine. I mean, he's got a bishop, and I have an extra pawn. This just might be a simpler way to win. I mean, it's giving up, numerically, it's giving up some advantage according to the engine evaluation, but I think I would be tempted to play this way if I were black. It's just exchanging down into a simpler, easier win. Okay, so, but he kept pieces on. He played rook to b8. And so now I get to activate my king, hitting his bishop. Bishop drops back to a2. King c5, and now I'm thinking of marching this pawn down and exchanging it for a piece. He brings his king over, d6, all very logical, and you see he's keeping his advantage through here, so I'm not actually able to, excuse me, king e8, I'm not actually able to get much back with this trick that I'm trying to pull here because his king gets over in front of my pawn in time. So here I play f4. Yeah, I just kind of ran out of things I could do over here and started playing over here, basically. And he went f5. Bishop here. I went thinking of playing a pawn to g4 and exchanging some of these off. Another way to get into a more drawish situation, exchange off all the pawns. He went rook b3 here. Okay, so that's one of the moves, rook b3. I went bishop to d5. And now he took. And suddenly this is not so good. Yeah, that's what it is. When I went here, I was skewering the rook and the bishop, so he should just check, rook c3 check. And where can I go? I can't even defend my bishop. Yeah, okay, so that was a desperation move on my part, and he should have just checked me and won the bishop. So he played here instead. And so I get to take his bishop. And now he's still winning. But he plays rook to g4, going after these pawns. Play bishop to f7. Plays h5. Now h5, his advantage is starting to drop again. Oh no, every time the computer looks at it, he thinks a little bit deeper and says, no, white, black is still winning. King d5. Rook takes f4 should have been played here. He took on h4. I take on g6. And now rook h3 or rook h1 should be played. Rook takes f4. And I get another pawn. And That's pretty interesting, and his advantage has dropped to just a few points. And now we're kind of within the drawing range. So why is rook h1 better? Here, put the rook here. I'm going to take this pawn. You would think I have two pawns which are kind of close together. That might be worth something. Rook g1. King d4. I would play here, yeah. h4. Let's put the bishop in front of the pawn. Rook g3. I guess that's not going to work. I was thinking get the bishop here and then advance these pawns. That I'm sort of forced to take here. And my pawns are not. Let's back up. Oh, I think I would go here. Yeah. Sometimes if you have a pawn and a king far enough advanced, you can trade them off for the rook and force a draw that way. But the problem is my pawns are not far enough advanced. Okay, so that's why staying on the h-file and holding onto this pawn and forcing me to give up my bishop is the way to win this game. So he played rook takes f4. I take the other pawn. And so now he's got an f pawn instead of an h pawn, and that's going to make the difference. So he went rook f1. And that was the final blow. Now after king e5, this is actually a draw. So rook f1. He can keep his advantage by playing rook h4. Yeah, these tempos, moving your rook with tempo is very important. So I have to move my bishop. So I go here. He pushes the pawn forward. King here. King d7. Now if I check, he can take that pawn with his king. So I can put my king in front of the pawn. He can grab this one. King e5. So eventually, king f2. Yeah, eventually he's going to force me to trade a piece or something for this pawn because my king can't stop it between his king and his rook giving checks. I can't stop this pawn from moving forward, so eventually I'll have to sack my bishop, and then he can mate me with king and rook. So that's how to win this. Okay, so up until this point, he still had a winning game. His edge had diminished, but it was still winning, and a win is a win. But this move, rook f1, loses, or draws. And now the rest of it is pretty simple. I'm attacking his pawn, and he has to defend it or move it, and then I check his king. If he didn't move his pawn here, he could try checking me. And yeah, and then I can just take his pawn, right? And so rook against a bishop is a draw. So he has to stay defending the pawn if he wants to win. So he plays f4, but now I can get my bishop into a good square, also chasing his king back away from my pawn. And cancel. Where'd I move my bishop? Oh, I played king e4 here. Yeah. He played f3. I realized that pawn was not going to be able to get away from my king. He played f2. e1 check, and I grabbed the pawn, and now he plays rook to d1. Yeah, going after my pawn. d7. Rook takes d7. Bishop takes, and there's the draw. So it's kind of a funny game. There were some interesting points. One is the exchange sacrifice. You know, what do you need as compensation for the exchange? So a pawn plus a little something else, a bishop pair or some structural damage in your opponent's pawn structure or some weaknesses is probably sufficient compensation, which I didn't have here. And then ways to play in this funny double fianchetto setup like queen a1, things to keep in mind. And in the endgame, always remember to keep your king active and look for those drawing chances. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I'll see you later. Bye.